Morning, everyone. I'm going to call to order the April 5th meeting of the Economic Development Commission, and as a first item of business, I will note that we do have a quorum present, including a few people on the Zoom. So I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the March 3rd meeting, which actually I think was the March 1st meeting, wasn't it?
Okay.
So we'll correct that.
Oh, I see. On the minutes, it says March 1st.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions, corrections, deletions, additions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Do we need to do a roll call because of people on Zoom?
We do.
That's what I was afraid of. Okay, well, we'll start by, I guess, you, Andy. We're going to go around the room because we have to do a roll call because of people joining from Zoom, so.
Andrew Ward.
What's that? No, we don't need to do a roll call of attendance, but on the motion to approve the minutes of the March 1st.
Oh, yeah, approved.
Yes, that's a yes.
Yes.
Bob?
Aye.
Yes.
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 And the chair votes yes.
And don't forget
What about the
Anna.
two on the
Oh,
Zoom?
I'm sorry.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Anna.
I don't vote.
Yeah, Ben doesn't vote,
Good
so,
job.
How do you feel?
yeah. Okay. And Sean, why don't you give us your report?
Sure. Good morning. The chair asked me to look to update the group on a couple of issues. So the one that we all want to know about is outdoor dining. We have, I'm sitting on a weekly meeting with the staff that is reviewing the applications. We have 15 applications to date. The application period is rolling, so it will not close in the event new restaurants open and come in and want to come in for outdoor dining. Of the 15 applications, one is going to be denied. It's the Goat. I don't know if they looked at the ordinance to see they can't be in the street. And there was and Stroll applied for 2. Their second location is on private property. So that brings us down to 13, and they're all going through the process of understanding the new rules. Of note, we have not received applications from Dwyer's, Massimo, Siri Street Bakery, nor the press room. And the other issue to keep in mind is the Thirsty Moose, as well as Stady and maybe eventually the Hammer, will have to adhere to the new rules on using a parking space or a standard parking space, not the diagonal parking, which will change the amount of space that they can use. So we've had a couple of meetings with staff, and basically the general staff observations are there's a learning curve to the detail of plans that the applicants need to supply. And so the staff is reaching back out to kind of walk them through that. And I've offered my time to go talk to those folks as well if there's a real challenge. But that's the status of outdoor dining.
And what's the, you mentioned it's a rolling application timeframe, so for those that haven't applied yet, that have in the past, if they're, have plans to, what's the outside date for businesses currently open?
So businesses can, they can start outdoor dining as early as May 1st.
But their applications would have had to be, is there a deadline for like existing restaurants that we had set? I'd have to go back and look.
Not really.
So it's truly rolling.
It truly is, because we don't want to. I think the thought is not to shut it off, not to shut anybody out.
No,
I mean,
but the flip side of that is you wait at your own peril.
Right.
And,
Right.
The later you apply, the later you will be
Open.
processed. And
Yep.
it's easier for the folks who need Jersey barriers to apply early, so we know when to drop the barriers and how to work that better.
Sean, if I could, how does this, relative to timing of the year to date, what does it look like versus last year? How many would have applied at roughly this time last year?
I didn't get into that level of detail ever, but there were 30 applications last year.
So maybe twice as many. potentially.
I don't know if they were at as early as this, possibly, but there were 30 that were approved last year.
We had a hard deadline, right? Did we have a hard deadline? You had to
I
be
don't
in?
Not really.
No, it's just, I think it was more to the city manager's point, to, if you wanted to be set up on May 1st, you needed to let us know what you needed.
And there was no prorating or anything, so it was to your benefit to
Correct.
Yeah, right.
hop on that early.
Yeah, I thought we had a hard date that you had to have your application in by.
Yeah, so part of my update is to advise this group and to request this group, if you hear concerns or complaints, please send them my way, because I sit with that group. It is a new ordinance. There is a learning curve, and there are things that maybe our businesses aren't going to like. But that is the ordinance. That's what was passed by City Council. And I'm more than happy to walk folks through that.
Great.
So,
And just to be clear, this list does not include people who just want a sidewalk obstruction.
right.
Is there any sense that the people who are missing are going to apply, or they've decided not to?
I heard through the grapevine that, that in terms of Ceres Street, that that may not happen because of someone not wanting to give up a loading zone, which is what facilitated the loading zone and the parking spaces being flipped, if you recall, for the last couple of years. So that may not happen.
And Dwyer's just purchased the press room, or is in the process of that, so that might impact their permitting as
I've
well.
heard that, yeah.
I think there is intent for an application in both cases, as far as I heard as of this past week, so.
Again, I would encourage you to refer people to the ordinance and to me, because it's different, requiring platforms, et cetera.
I've pointed out some changes to
Great.
Kevin Dwyer.
Thank you. That's, this is an opportunity for this group to educate,
Okay. Good.
okay? Next topic, CSX Railroad. Chair asked me to check into that. A couple of things. We are working with CSX, we, the city, in terms of encumbrances, in regards to, not encumbrances, easements in terms of the found replace construction projects. And a couple of things of note. There was concerns about air quality in the Islington Creek neighborhood. CSX has been very helpful. They've upgraded their locomotives. They are reducing idling time. They're measuring air quality. And I love this. They've set up a 800 number for residents to call them directly if they have concerns. So they've really stepped up and filled a void and taken responsibility for their own efforts. In terms of commercially, they have upgraded and continue to upgrade their assets. They've upgraded the wooden trestles. They're working more closely with customers to better forecast equipment, which basically means there won't be as many cars stored in the Portsmouth yard based on better forecasting. And the last thing is, I asked about future growth. Their customers that they move freight for through Portsmouth are not located in Portsmouth, and they probably don't have any future customers located, but they are located in our region. So they do plan to continue to try to grow that business. They didn't have anything specific, but they're more than happy to put us in touch with their commercial sales folks if we wanted to know more about their efforts to expand the volume of freight through Portsmouth.
If I can, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Co-Chairs, I believe also they've piloted an effort to switch cars at Rockingham Junction instead of here, because that was a specific request of the neighborhood, knowing there is a capacity or a capability to do that. And I think they're trying that out. So that could mean running fewer cars unnecessarily through this area.
Yeah, I think they seem to be dialed into the community and to the needs of Portsmouth. So it was a good conversation, and they advised me to give them a call anytime.
But to your knowledge, they're not planning on upgrading the rail yard itself or anything along those lines?
No, they're really focused on using their equipment and their facilities more efficiently. And again, it starts all the way with the forecast from their customers to know to have the right equipment in the right place, less downtime, less dwell time, more just flow.
Do you know if they're in touch with Gino about working out some synergies with the port?
I didn't ask that question, but I can add that to my next conversation.
I'd be interested, because if you could tie those in, there'd potentially be more activity for both.
Great.
Other questions on the,
I was curious, how is that 800 number being advertised?
I don't know. I can find out.
Like maybe some temporary signage or something like that.
okay. Anything else, Sean? Oh, wait, and
Where is Rockingham Junction?
Newfield.
Okay,
It is
far away.
southwest of here.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay, next topic that the chair asked me to check into. So you may have seen the article about offshore wind, and the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, BOEM, has identified the wind energy area. Anybody see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's 2 million acres, and it is between 23 and 92 miles off the coasts, New Hampshire, Maine, and Massachusetts. And I had heard this number when I was on the Offshore Wind Commission, that it was at least 25 miles offshore. So you won't see them. That's never been the issue, right? But more to come. That's in the Gulf of Maine. It's a long-term investment. You may have also heard that the state of Maine has identified Searsport. They have a facility in Searsport that they're going to build out to be the offshore wind port. Probably heard that, Phil. So that's a big deal. That's a big investment by the state of Maine. Doesn't mean there won't be activity here in our port, but it really does remain to be seen when this will start up and what the supply chain will look like. I've contended all along that the opportunity for New Hampshire is to be in that supply chain of the construction and the maintenance of the equipment, not necessarily the big stuff, but all the other things that go into offshore wind. Questions? Great. You may have also seen the article about the renewable energy large battery storage area that Granite Shore Power has decided to close Schiller completely, and they're looking at ways to convert that property into a large battery storage facility. There's probably a lot of questions on that.
Yeah,
but basically,
what does that mean?
Well, so it's basically, I want to say what I've researched is there's these container-sized, there's shipping containers, if you will. We all know what they look like. And inside of those are battery units, many battery units. And so it's almost like having a farm for batteries. Like you would have a wind farm, right? You'd have all the equipment there to generate power. This is really about storing power. And it's really about adding capacity. I don't want to get out of my ahead of my skis here, but in terms of our grid, in terms of electrical production, in terms of capacity. So a lot more to come on that. That article was just out this week, but I think it's a great it's a great use. It's property that is in Portsmouth. We know we have electrical needs, so a lot more to come on that. But that's kind of related to offshore wind and clean energy.
So,
Battery storage.
who uses the batteries?
I'm pretty confident it's going to be about Eversource and other providers connecting to that to then use it as capacity. But now I'm way out of my league in
Okay.
terms of. If you want, I saw this article about this huge battery storage facility in California, which produces has an amazing amount of capacity. I'm happy to share that if you want to do a little research on your own. But
Sure, but why don't you circulate that?
Can I jump in for a moment?
Absolutely.
So this sort of solves the on-demand issue with renewable energies, right? So like wind is a great example. Wind is 24 hours a day. It's like offshore wind is a great example. It's going to be generating power in times when it's not needed, right? Like there's very little need for power overnight, so that energy will be kind of wasted. And so these facilities will store that energy, and then at 11 a.m. in July, when all the air conditioners turn on, they will draw energy out of these batteries and use it. So it's like the answer to the peaks of the energy demands for a lot of these renewables.
That makes a lot of sense. Any questions on that?
Sean, do we lose capacity? You know, Schiller generated megawatts for decades. So what happened when, and I know it went from coal to wood, right?
Right,
And now it's it's fully offline?
right.
Okay, so we've
How
been
long-
doing, yeah, how long we've been doing without that electricity? Does anyone know?
Anybody? I have no idea. Never.
Oh, but we'll be happy in Atlantic Heights not to have black soot through the course of the winter.
It's been a while, right, that they have.
I think so.
I think it's been a
commission
few
for-
years.
Yeah, I couldn't pinpoint
2021,
when.
I don't, I'm guessing, but
Yeah.
I feel like the article might have mentioned it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so there will be some continued use. I wasn't sure if that overall property might be redeveloped, and I'm not sure the acreage they control, so not a question, but just maybe a thought on.
Yeah, I mean, it was the owner who talked about the renewable energy park, and it sounds like they're working with the EPA, they're working with others, and so I think in terms of acknowledging that we have these peak issues, and as we continue to move to alternative energy, you don't want to lose it, to Ben's point, right? There could be tidal energy, there could be offshore wind, whatever it might be, but then there's this issue of capturing it to use it either during peak or, as the technology continues to improve all the time.
But it's a storage for their energy,
That's
the
what-
energy they create.
That's what they propose. Well, I don't know if when you say they create, I don't know.
Well, Eversource, what I'm getting at, so when I first heard this, I was thinking, they're now, the Chinese have developed these electric vehicle batteries that instead of recharging your battery, you just go in and they switch out and give you a new one. And I was wondering if that's the type of battery farm you're talking about. But it sounds like this is just the renewable energy that they create.
Or purchase.
Yeah,
Or purchase.
Yeah, it's
It's
a
stored
storage facility, right, for use however that goes. And I don't know what the relationship will be between Granite Shore Power and Eversource, but obviously, I would imagine that's how it's going to work, because is Granite Shore Power a supplier of energy? Do they compete with Eversource? I don't know the answer to that. Okay.
Well, Eversource doesn't create power anymore. Eversource is only in the distribution and residential consumer sales of power. They don't generate power anymore. They split those two. 5 years ago, there was a monopoly kind of situation going on, and so they sold off all their energy creation assets to folks like NextGen and those. And so Eversource is only in the distribution.
They own the wires.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Ben. Just a couple other notes, Tom. One is, I won't steal any thunder, but the Business Support Working Group, we have a demo with the CRM vendor later on this morning, so more to come on that. And the last thing is the Pierce Island RFP for Request for Public Art was posted to our website last night. That's going to be an interesting process, but it's out there. The Public Art Review Committee is going to work with the city on that. They're going to be the evaluators of it, but we are handling the RFP process through my office. And that's the update there. And I do have hard copies of our new cultural plan, if anyone would like one, to take with them today. That's my report, Tom.
Great. And while we're talking, I'm going to submit around, here's a map of the new wind energy area that you were talking about. You got to concentrate because it's kind of small, but it shows you a box that's off of the 3 states that will ultimately see all the wind turbines.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Our working group updates, we'll start with the business resilience. That would be you, Ann.
Which maybe is economic resilience. I forget. I feel like we changed our name, and I should.
I think it started with the big one, and that
Oh,
we
it
changed
did.
it to
I don't
business
know.
resilience.
Well, anyway.
We're not sustainability, is it?
We're not sustainability. But thank you for teeing up all the talk about electricity, because I'm going to start off with talking about electricity.
We have a slideshow if you want to turn.
Oh, yeah, pull up I have pictures. I always like pictures. There we go.
Go.
So we were tasked with 2 different topics, the downtown power grid and public transportation. So I'm going to start with the power grid. because Sean queued me up so nicely. We met with, thank you, we met with Eversource via Zoom a couple of weeks ago. It was a super interesting conversation. We met with Mike Busby, who I believe is sort of like our go-to guy as
Correct.
City of Portsmouth. Mike is the guy, and he, I think, knows every square inch of this city. The interesting thing, well, I should start with what we were trying to learn. So we wanted to know what's the current status of our grid? Is it adequate? How does it work? Is it future-proofed? And is there anything the city can do to help? So here's a look at what Eversource, this was kind of a live view that I took a screenshot of. When you see these maps from Eversource, the red and the brown lines are existing power, and the blue is upcoming and wish list. And that's the piece that was really interesting to us, is knowing that there's this constant conversation, and every time that any development becomes even a glimmer of a possibility, Eversource is the first conversation, because what they want to do with any development, and on here I've called out the McIntyre, back when the city was still in the works on that, before we even knew what was going to happen there with the city, Eversource was in there having conversations with the city about where they might site pad easements for transformers. So what they want are these little spots of land to put the big green boxes that you see all over the city. And when they site those, they oversize it, so they weren't necessarily looking to site transformers to run the McIntyre site. When you see the ones that are actually on the corner there of Bow and Penn Hollow, and now all of this is not in play anymore. This is the old, 2 years ago, this is what might have been. The ones on the corner of Bow and Penn Hollow, those transformers, which would have had an easement at the McIntyre, were intended to supply power for future development on Penn Hollow Street. So they're always kind of looking to where can we put a transformer to support development that we don't even know about yet. So I think this was one of the big questions that we were asking is, are they future-proof? What triggered this? Well, wait, let's go to the next slide. Here's Hanover Garage.
Could you share your screen, Karen? We cannot see the slide.
I thought I was. Hold on. Kevin, if you're listening, maybe there's a way to teach me how to do it live. I don't know how to do that.
So I'll keep going, and
I don't know if I'm sharing it here. Is there a different way to share that they can see it?
I don't know.
I think you have to do it from within the Zoom.
Within the Zoom, yeah.
Within the Zoom, there's a button on the bottom, share screen.
Yeah, that's what I thought I was doing. Oh, yeah, hi. Let's try that then. Better?
Perfect.
Oh, yeah, that'll be
Yes,
sure.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay,
What do you know?
and then go full screen on that.
There we go.
There we go.
Still good?
Perfect. Thank
Okay.
you.
Hold on. For their benefit, we're just going to let them enjoy the first slide. for a
Sure.
second.
So here's the slide where the red lines are existing and the blue lines are either future or wish list. And you can, I've kind of zoomed this one in. It was a bigger picture, but I zoomed it in so you can see that McIntyre block. I should say that when we met with Mike, he said that the following week, which would have been like a week or two ago, he had a meeting scheduled with the current owner of the McIntyre site to do exactly what he had done with the city, as illustrated here, that he will be asking for easements for pads with the current owner to help bring power to all four sides, all the neighbors all around, in addition to the McIntyre block. All right, now on the next slide. So here's Hanover Garage. I think that we all have seen the big green boxes around Hanover Garage. And what I didn't really think about, the power needs have increased enormously in Portsmouth. And I don't know, I had this notion it's because we're all plugging in our computers, but that is not correct. What we're really doing is our buildings are largely being evolving to be all-electric buildings. Mini splits, our heating and cooling of our buildings, I should say specifically, are moving to be all-electric, and that's what's bumped up the power needs. So I've always noticed all these transformers at Hanover Garage, but I never really thought about that we are not actually heating and cooling much of Hanover Garage. The garage, I have no idea what their electric bill is, but we're not spending much on electricity at Hanover Garage. It's a tiny office and a couple of bars that let us in and out. So the reality is that when the city is letting Eversource have an easement for pads on the perimeter of the Hanover garage, they're doing that for the neighbors. So the city is the easiest place, city land is the easiest place to site an easement for a pad. And that's why we see so many at the Hanover garage, because you're planning to help everybody all around that garage area. So go to the next slide. Here are our beautiful transformers. So the three on the left are Hanover Garage, and right there by what's normally the entrance, it's practically a transformer farm. But by my estimation, the power that's coming through there, very little of that is really meant for the garage. It's meant for businesses surrounding the garage. On the right is new construction at Deer Street, the three sites down there? And same thing, those transformers are oversized to help power the surrounding neighborhood should it need it at some point in the future. Now, while this slide is up, yes, they are, especially by that lower left, they are really not attractive. But just so you know, the Arts and Culture Committee and the Public Art, what are they called? Review Committee, are both aware that there is a possibility that we could do something to make our transformers more interesting. I don't know the legalities and how that all works, but that's their purview and they're on it. So stay tuned. You might see something to do with transformers, maybe from one or both of those groups. All right, next slide. There was a notion of why aren't we going underground? Some cities put transformers underground, and Mike Busby wanted us to know what it looks like underground. So all that graffiti on the street, that is color-coded markings that all are lines that are under that site. That's Ladd Street, underneath there. When they dug up Market Street, that's on the right, here's one of the things they found that he took close-up pictures of, that there were communications lines that were encased in wood. So they find all sorts of crazy stuff under the street. And more, chaos under the street. This is Market Street, or Ladd, I think that's Market. And he talked a lot about Sean, your involvement, the coordination, and how much is going on underneath the streets that we don't know about.
This was a 5-utility effort that took only 7 weeks.
Right.
And it was tightly managed, and it couldn't have happened without some coordination. And in another world, you'd have 5 different utilities opening up the street 5 times.
Yeah, so that was last year's Market Street and Commercial Alley, where everything had to go underground and all the utilities worked together, and we worked with the businesses, didn't shut anybody down. It was a big effort. But just to make your point, we're 400 years old, and I'm sitting in these DPW meetings. When you open up the street, you don't know what you're going to find, or you may find a cast iron pipe from 1895 that needs to be replaced.
Dave DeRoche talked about that with Islington Street.
1895. So this is serious stuff, and it's not as simple as just fix it and give me a transformer. The other point I want to make about your transformer, Ann, because I sat in on your group meeting, was to Ann's point about putting transformers on public property. It's not as easy to put transformers on private property. So you could have a developer come in and want all this power and say, but you're not putting that ugly thing on my property.
Yeah, actually,
so
back
how
up
do you
to
how do you serve that client?
To the transformer picture, because I should say what triggered us to want to look at the power grid is questions about this sort of anecdotal information we had about Stady, of why is that lot empty, why isn't that being developed? I heard something about there's not enough power for that site. So the reality of that Stady corner, that building is currently got 200 amps of power going to it, and that's typical. The buildings in downtown Portsmouth tend to have 100 to 200 amps, and what you need for an ordinary building is about 800 amps. And what Stady needs is 2,000 amps. So they need to go to from 200 amps to 2,000 amps. That
About the old state.
the old burned out the empty lot.
Empty lot.
I think that's the
To
least,
build-
that's the least of the problems, isn't it?
Well, it's a big problem. So to build on that empty lot, they need to supply 2,000 amps of power to that lot. So what they need is one of these big green transformer boxes to do that. But it's a lot line project. There is no backyard to that. There's nowhere to put it. So Eversource is struggling with how would we site this? I mean, the example of where it did work is Hearth Market. there are 2 large transformers behind the artsy wall in what we're calling Hearth Alley. I didn't realize till Mike Busby told us those transformers at Hearth are hugely oversized. They're not just to power the Hearth building. They're to power all of future growth in Penhallow, all the adjacent buildings. So there's a lot more behind that artsy wall than it was really needed for the site. So that was an easement that was given to Eversource to oversize the transformer there. But when you go to Stady, there's nowhere to put that transformer. So, I mean, there may be other problems, but you can't even get to the other problems until you figure out how to get power to the site. And you can't go underground because we've seen the pictures of the underground.
No real estate underground.
There's
more
no
above
real
ground.
estate underground. There is some underground transformers in Manchester. They're trying to get rid of them. When you have an underground transformer, it's a room, and a person needs to be able to get into that room, down a manhole, headroom, headspace. You need to be in there. So it's a really large place under the street, and Portsmouth streets don't have that. So Stady is in the to be determined.
And you locate it within a building?
That's one of the things that
Building, and it keeps that open or something?
the Stady looked at that, and it would take out 2 floors. It would take out a corner of 2 floors of their building, about a 12 by 12 corner, 2 floors,
Why 2
which
floors? Do you need a certain
Access.
amount of?
access and space around it.
Yeah.
And when you remove that amount of square footage from the building, then your calculations on return on investment go upside down.
I don't
And
suppose they pay rent. Utilities.
I don't think, I don't know. Can't answer that.
For
but-
easements
For
only.
easements.
For
yeah.
easements only.
For easements, yeah. Don't know.
Is there a maximum distance from where a transformer should be?
There
to the
is,
building?
and I didn't quite get that from him. I mean, you could go maybe a building or 2 away, but we talked about, could you go a block or 2? And he said no.
Well,
Yes,
to put it
except,
into context, Hearth Market had caused the extension of electric power over to State Street by the temple. So it started there, as I recall,
Okay.
the project to support the electric needs. And then I think he's worked, to your point, to accommodate power to connect to the next block of Penhallow when that comes online with McIntyre and beyond.
so half a block to a block, something?
But the infrastructure footprint would extend beyond whatever.
And it's very
building.
expensive.
Yes.
You're digging up the street to do this. So very expensive, very disruptive.
Yeah, the other point that what I took away from that meeting was there's a lot of forward looking, there's a lot of future planning, and,
lot of
and
future
constantly
planning.
evaluating what can be done when a project comes to fruition and gets
There-
permitted and they start digging.
They're citing easements for pads that don't even get a transformer put on them, but they have the easement. It's ready to go. They have a space for projects that don't even exist.
But there's a delicate balance between what Eversource can fund on its own and has the wherewithal to do, given all their other capital needs, and the contribution of the developer. So it's
Right.
it's a case-by-case
Case by
situation.
case. Okay, now you
Okay,
can flip
moving along.
to the rogue installations. So then we moved into this category. We kind of got into the how can the city help? What's happening here? And I think this was primarily prior to maybe 2021. 2022. Prior to 2022, Eversource was seeing a lot of rogue installations, which is the picture on the left. That row of mini splits was all done without building permits from the city. So the city didn't know that had happened. That so overloaded the can that was out on the pole near this site that the paint melted off the can and the transformer, I guess, blew or melted or something, disrupting power. So one of the things that he sort of asked, he did say, since Shanti Wolf, since our inspections department has become more efficient, he's seeing fewer of these rogue installations. But he wanted us to kind of get the word out that when you install a big energy user like a mini split without a building permit, and you start to overload that transformer, whether it's a small one on a pole or a big box, you're creating a fire hazard that can impact the whole neighborhood. So one of our action items was, can we, as EDC, and then kind of moving that on to the city, can we get the word out on, this is a bad idea? Don't do this. And why?
And in what context and what type of permitting? Because I think there's a rise in mini splits everywhere, so it's
Right.
not just downtown, it's
It's
residential.
everywhere, but downtown is where you're more likely to overload the pole. He kind of said the residential areas, you're not in this power crunch. Please get a building permit, but it's not going to set the pole on fire. These were all installed with the contractor not pulling a permit. The picture on the left. The picture on the right, these are also rogue installations, but this is a different category that these, whatever that unit's called, the thing that sits.
Condenser.
Thank you. The condenser that's sitting on the ground is blocking access to the meters. And so the Eversource workers can't even get in to read meters, to service meters. It's not how these should be set up. So that's not as much of a fire hazard, but just they shouldn't be cited the way they are. You need to work with Eversource. So that was one of our action items. Do you have any other kind of piece on that? And then
Let me add to that piece. Our communications team is starting a Did You Know series, and
That'd be perfect.
I think that's a, did you know you actually need a permit when you put in a mini split?
Put in a mini split.
And we'll show that picture, and we'll rat some people out, and we will just...
And there you go.
We're going to have fun with educational topics and things we think people ought to know.
So who's
the-
responsible ultimately? The contractor or the property owner?
Property
Do they
owner
have to
or-
remove
Property.
Or what happened?
I don't know what happened there.
I mean, whoever installed it's responsible, but the property owner's accountable for any installation on the property, so it probably
Usually,
depends.
the property owner has to pull the permit.
Yeah.
So that's where the,
But whoever's installing it, depending upon the size of the job, may do it on the property owner's behalf, correct?
Yeah.
I would think so, yeah.
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 The other thing that he brought up that's a challenge for Eversource is that when you pull a building permit, you need to get what's called a letter to service from Eversource. And that tells Eversource that you have a project that's going to need X amount of electricity. And that letter to service is required at projects over a certain size. But what Eversource is finding is that there are projects happening around Portsmouth. He named one where there was a house that was made into 6 apartments. And that developer or owner did not pull this letter from Eversource because his building permit didn't require it, so he didn't do it. And on the day they went to remove the temporary service and bring Eversource service online, they called Eversource, and there wasn't enough power in that neighborhood to power this building. And so it was this giant emergency operation to get cans on poles to power the building. Not done as attractively or as efficiently as a neighborhood would like. So his suggestion, and I believe this is a conversation between Eversource and the planning department, that perhaps what's required on a building permit, that level needs to drop down to a smaller project than is currently required. It's not a single it's not my house putting in too many splits, but it's a higher level than that. He feels like it's not at the right place. So that, I believe, we're just initiating a kind of, hey, can you talk and figure this out? So that's not going to be an EDC initiative, but a good thing to know and move that on to the city. And
This slide really sums up a lot of what we heard and Ann has mentioned verbally, right?
it was interesting, I thought. And the amount of future planning they do is staggering. I was very impressed.
All right, next topic.
Moving on.
So before your next topic, any questions of Ann on the power grid?
One question on power lines. I know we talk about how much is going on in the streets. Is there a plan at any point, or is it on their wish list to bury any of the power lines, like on Market Street, for example?
It's definitely on everybody's wish list. It's a matter of money, right?
It's in the CIP, I think.
Way out.
Way
right,
out.
and in support of other projects, and if Eversource has the funding at that point in time, but it's
I feel
something
like it's-
we'd all like to
So
do.
it's feasible and it's on the wish list, but it's not.
It's on the CIP, but every year
Slides.
it slides out.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
But I will say, anytime there's an opportunity, like in commerciality, it happened.
Great.
So it's not that it's not going to happen, it's just,
It's a combination of the developer's willingness to include it in the
Yep.
budget, the real estate involved, and I understand there is real estate along Market Street.
My only other question is this was, first of all, excellent presentation. Thank you for all the good info. Are there similar concerns outside of the downtown area around West End, or do they have enough
No.
foresight and space to be able to meet the needs?
He said this is
outside of-
very much a downtown area problem, except for I've got a big house, I'm changing it into 8 apartments, and I didn't tell Eversource ahead of time. But that would be anywhere in the city, because that was not the one he pointed out to us was not downtown. So that building permit, at what level do you need a letter to service? All right.
So, well, let me see if I can distill this down a little bit. So the message I'm getting is that the perception that we have a grid problem in Portsmouth is not as real as the perception. That
I'd agree with that.
Eversource is working to acquire sites even before the developments occur.
That's right.
So is the old State Street Saloon site a one-off, or are there other locations where the development can't go forward right now because of lack of a space for a transformer?
It's the only one that he talked about. Well, we asked him specifically about that one.
McIntyre's going to have some challenges to put the transformers in an area that doesn't impact the overall aesthetic of the development. And there were contemplations of putting the transformer and the supporting infrastructure in the garage there, and then allowing a whole lot of access, venting, stairways. It took up a lot of space. And the consideration there was it would eat X number of parking spaces, but it needed to be done to the benefit of the overall project. So there'll have to be some creativity for sites like that.
but I don't, Tom, to your point, I don't think there's any developments that are being held up for that particular reason outside of Stady.
Okay, well, that's what I was getting at. So there's not really an action item as far as, is there an informational role we can play in some way, other than this letter to service threshold?
Letter to service and the rogue installations, those were the two. We kind of asked him a number of times, where are your sticky spots? What can we do to help?
Right.
And those were the two that he went back to.
Okay. I know this whole grid issue was something you had an interest in originally, Andrew. Any questions or thoughts on, or does this answer your original inquiry?
Yeah, my most the recent experience was with 105 Market Street and 105, 107, and 205 Market Street. And they've 105, 107. It's not a project, so that kind of cured that we thought it was, but it's not right now. 205 solved their problem, but it was expensive. It was just an extension of electric. The last I heard, that was a $100,000 extension. It's curious how just the timing of a project happens. Is Eversource, do they already have that easement? Do they already have that transformer location? But that's where my interest was 2 projects that happened within 6 months of each other, and one got delayed.
Okay.
So, but it relates to Phil's question about burying lines too. That came up right away because those lines run right in front of both of those buildings. The telephone, the elevated.
Well, and we actually heightened the poles
right.
Yeah, they're huge.
20 years ago.
I should throw in, too, I forgot one of his little details. They know that sometime in the next few years, the tugboats are going to need additional power, and they'll have an easement for a transformer there. And when that transformer is installed, the intention is it will provide additional power for the whole Ceres Street, that whole block, and potentially up into businesses that are on the upper floors of that, which would front on Market Street. So that tugboat transformer could bring goodness a few years down the road. So that's the future planning. He didn't say how many years, but a few.
Okay. Any other questions on the grid issue? All right, talk to us. Transportation.
Coast slide. Not as many pictures, but we met with Rad Nichols, who is the executive director of Coast. I have to say, first of all, not until I put this slide together a few days ago did I realize that COAST is an acronym that is new to me. But there it is, a Cooperative Alliance for Seacoast Transportation. COAST has a budget of $8 million annually. Federal funding covers 55 to 60% of it, and the community pay-in, buy-in covers 20 to 25%. They're going to have some funding crunches. They're worried they're losing some of their federal funding as communities re-up. That's always a wild card. This one wasn't quite as easy for us to wrap ourselves around. So this was kind of a exploring what's offered currently, and then we're going to have to move on to some other research. There were things that I just didn't know the stats on it. 500 to 600 trips a month on the ADA and senior transport. That's their most robust thing. Is the it's called paratransport. I think it tends to be those smaller buses that we see. And that is the most robust in the state because I believe that Portsmouth has the biggest buy-in on that. They've got some initiatives they're doing in other cities that are coming here. Starting probably in the summer, they're going to offer a 1-year bus pass to all city and school employees in Portsmouth that they can take to anywhere. That they think of that as marketing for their services. People might ride the bus who had never done it. They would like us to help push that notion out, that program, when that happens. We asked about the on-demand microtransit, and Coast kind of said we don't have the resources to do that. It's too expensive. It doesn't really work for us. They did tell us that Aspen, Colorado is doing it really successfully, and that's a model we should look at. And I have looked at that. It does look really interesting, but we feel like, well, now we kind of know all the information of what we're getting locally from Coast, and our next job is to move on and start to look at the microtransit software companies like Via and Rideshare, and look at some of the communities that are offering microtransit to kind of get a bigger picture of what this is. We did have sort of some action items, making sure that developers know things like, for instance, if a new development, let's use Christmas tree shops, the potential housing there. If a new development is within a quarter of a mile of a bus stop, they can qualify for a 20% reduction of parking on their site. And that's one of those, a lot of people, oh, look at our realtors going, huh? A lot of people are unaware of that. Maybe that's something we should push out. Rad Nichols said some employees subsidize monthly passes for their employees. Maybe that's something that would be in this program of Did You Know? With the city. The Coast has no marketing budget, so any of these sorts of things, they have no real ability to push it out and get traction for that. What else do I have here? Yeah, mostly wanting us to kind of use our city megaphone to bring awareness to the paratransit for ADA and elderly transport. They do that really well. And the one thing they do have in the hopper that they're exploring, buses stop at 8 p.m., 9 p.m. now. They're exploring the downtown route going later to accommodate restaurant workers, but unsure if that's feasible for them. To be determined. So this one wasn't quite the level of information as Eversource, because we have a lot more exploring to do on the topic.
All right.
Questions?
Did you ever, or did anyone ever provide you with the presentation we got?
The VIA.
Was that what it was?
Yes. Sarah dug it up.
Yeah,
We've got it. I've connected with VIA, and they are happy to jump in anytime, have conversation, give a presentation.
I think they gave us a proposal. I don't remember exactly.
I have the PowerPoint,
Yeah.
which was it was on the city website from back in, was it like December of
2019.
Yeah.
December of 19, I
Yeah.
think, right before the world
In the before
caught on
times.
fire. So, and that's not who's servicing Aspen, Colorado. There's this one called, I think it's called Rideshare. I'm fuzzy on that.
Other questions? So just, again, my point I draw out of this is that it sounds like Coast really is a fixed route carrier, so to speak. And are they concerned that by virtue of not hitting most of the population areas of Portsmouth, that there's a cap on how many people they're going to be able to carry anyways? Or do they believe if the word gets out, more people will ride buses?
He seemed to think if the word got out, more people will ride buses, I think.
They're not as nimble as you might want them to be because of the routes they need to run and the loops they need to make and the connections they need to make to ports of call outside of Portsmouth.
This ride for free for a year program they will be launching for city and school officials. I said, "Oh, is there a bus stop at each school?" And he said, "No, it's not meant for getting you to work. It's for I don't know what, for going places other than work on that bus pass." Because, in fact, I don't believe any of our schools have a Coast bus stop at the
Not right
most.
at the school, but they're close.
Walking,
I
but
think it would be interesting just to see a map, as we're doing more research. I think just helpful to understand kind of the current service route. I know we've got one near our neighborhood and
yeah,
many
it's
others throughout the city.
kind of
just to kind of
corridors.
understand. Yeah.
There's nothing on, so it's on the website, and actually even when you pull up a Google map, you can see the bus stops are shown on it. The city map on the city website shows it, and of course the Coast maps show them. It's $1.50 to go anywhere. You can have to change buses 10 times, and you still only pay $1.50.
It's amazing.
There was,
So it's cheap.
on one of your slides, there was a limited on-demand medical elderly Coast service, right?
Yes.
I was just wondering, is there any future efficiency opportunity if a VIA or VIA equivalent picked up that chunk of the Coast service, thereby making Coast's operating budget maybe smaller or more streamlined, and kind of took that off the plate?
According to Coast's website, that paratransit, I think it's either 2 vans or 3. It's
Yeah.
not a fleet of vans.
Right.
It's pretty small.
And you
There
have to
can
book a day or
You have to
so
book
in
a day in
advance.
advance.
Right.
So
It's not nimble, but it is there, and if you need to get to the doctor, they can get you there.
Yep.
If you're not a low-income person, you pay double the regular rate, so it's $3 to get you from wherever to wherever.
right.
But it does exist.
The bigger picture is that they're really not funded well by the state.
They're not
at all.
funded well.
Especially when you
all.
look at our neighbor states. So they're always looking for ways to extend and stretch, and then they have the same issues that a lot of other employers have, which is problems hiring or having to pay more for their workforce. So they're kind of getting it from all ends and doing the best they can. But
And I mean, we kind of kept going back to the Christmas tree shops just as an easy example. And like, would you be adding a bus stop there? And they're not prone to be adding bus stops. The quote was that it turns into spaghetti. It
Right.
makes all the routes complicated, and so no. And a development that's a quarter of a mile from a bus stop gets this potential for parking reduction. He said, so they said they'd like to encourage developers to do developments within a quarter mile of a bus stop because they're not likely to move that bus stop to be within a quarter mile of the development,
Yes,
which isn't really the way it works.
There's some rigidity in their model and the constraints from a budget perspective that it sounds like they're trying to operate within the parameters they have, which could potentially further erode ridership and their ability to provide services to the
right.
city.
And I didn't actually pull up a map to see, for instance, at Christmas tree shops, is there one within a quarter mile? There's one in the vicinity, but I didn't map it.
There's
Don't
the
know.
market basket. I know they've got spots at the grocery stores, but I don't know that that's a quarter mile.
that's not.
I don't know.
That's not.
Probably not.
Right. But this is
So-
something you're going to explore further
I'd like to talk to VIA and the company that services Aspen, whatever their name is, and then perhaps the cities themselves. There's a couple towns in Massachusetts that have microtransit that were interesting, and Aspen seems not terribly different than Portsmouth. Some seasonal ridership. I mean, they have their tourists are riding their microtransit. It's popular.
They must have similar hospitality, workers, parking, distance from work needs too,
Also, their microtransit is free. Aspen.
which means who pays for it?
Well, right.
Well, it just seems like the coast system is a 1950s style fixed route system when people were close to those routes. And now we're developing all other parts of the city. You know, it would take you longer to walk to the bus stop than it would, you know, to get on the bus
Right.
to your destination. And then the buses aren't going to your destination. So it just seems like there's a disconnect right now. But it seems like, if not a replacement of that system, an add-on to that system that would allow people anywhere in town to get to, you know, something other than a fixed route location might be viable. I mean, and the idea of being able to get on a vehicle of some sort and come into town for dinner,
Yeah, it's pretty attractive.
you know, and I'm always trying to think of ways to connect Pease with the rest of the city, particularly downtown, and having some type of thing that could act as a shuttle back and forth, an on-demand shuttle, particularly at lunch hour or something, would help accomplish that.
I should say, I'm planning to have lunch in Dover sometime in the near future, and I'm taking the bus. It takes 23 minutes, according to the website, and it will cost $1.50. So if anyone wants to have lunch in Dover with me, let me know.
Where are you going?
It depends.
Somewhere right downtown. Come have lunch.
Quarter mile
Someone
aside.
near the bus stop.
Because I have to take it from Market Square. Market Square to downtown Dover is 23
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Ben is mentioning he has to jump at 8:30. Could you give him a minute before he has to?
Oh,
leave?
absolutely, sure.
Yeah, I'm wrapped.
All right, Ben, we're going to jump to you. You're all done, Ian? Thank you, that was a great report. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Yes. Yeah, thank you. Debrief this morning. Try to condense 2 months worth of work into about 2 minutes. So we've been very busy these last 2 months, and I apologize for missing the March meeting. It's legislative season, so we're trying our best to follow all the comings and goings of bills in our legislature. Particularly focused on some housing legislation. There's some really interesting stuff there. I believe you probably heard some of that from one of the city attorneys, Jane Perini, last month. There's also some banking bills that are out there that are fairly concerning to that industry and have the potential to keep more money that's being borrowed within the state of New Hampshire. So those are really positive things that could be positive for that industry. So we're looking at that as well. There's also a fair amount of legislation that's viewed as a threat to our LGBTQ plus population and would kind of hurt the effort to welcome that community to the state of New Hampshire and to encourage our diversity. And so we're paying really close attention to that because it's a very emotional and deeply concerning issue to a lot of folks that we work very closely with. We've also, in that same vein of legislative work, held our elected officials reception. A few of you were there for that. Thank you very much. We also held a breakfast with Governor Chris Sununu, who was always very candid in his remarks and always interesting to hear from. But we had about 100 people at that. And moving on to some different topics, Celebrate Her. That's the new series that's focused on the women in our business community. Those events have been incredibly powerful and well attended and very, very strong. Ann Weidman was one of our recent speakers. Thank you, Ann, for that. We have another one coming up that's sold out next week, and then a final back-to-back kind of midday event in June, followed by a cocktail reception to wrap that up in June. So really pleased to see the interest in the community that gathered around that effort. I think everyone's well aware of our interest in pushing housing. I've been attending the housing committee meetings and are anxiously awaiting a conversation with that group about how the city could potentially work with employers that have a desire to build housing for their employees. I think there's some pretty low-hanging fruit there. There's certainly interest from a number of employers in the region that would love to build housing for their workforce. So I think that's a conversation worth having. A few other quick notes are our events, our networking events have just been wildly attended lately. We're running into capacity issues. So as an example, next week we'll be at TD Bank in downtown Portsmouth. If anyone wants to stop in, 8:30 to 9:30. My best guess is there'll be 50 people there. They're just very well attended these days, and that's been really great to see. I want to highlight a few other things. Catapult, our young professionals organization, has some new leadership. A young woman named Kaylee Gagne, who you may know, she runs the Kennebunk Savings Bank, the Kennebunk Savings Bank branch in Portsmouth, and she is just phenomenal. I can't say enough good things about Kaylee. She is just a very strong young woman leader, just amazing. And I really envision great things coming from Catapult this year. We've been going around meeting with all the other chamber presidents one-on-one to really grow the Seacoast-wide nature of Catapult and try to build that out. And those conversations have gone very well, and I think we're going to see a lot of growth in that organization this year. I just want to put a quick plug in. Restaurant Week is right around the corner, April 18th to the 27th. Those venues are all posted online. The reservations are happening, so get those in if you want to go out and dine. It's also, I think one of the beauties of Restaurant Week is it doesn't just support the restaurants that participate, because those restaurants are busy. A lot of people gravitate to other restaurants too because they can't get that reservation at the Restaurant Week restaurant. So it does boost pretty much every restaurant in town. And then lastly, I'll just mention that over the last 2 weeks or so, we've been meeting with the art galleries in our community and have taken a leadership role in Art Around Town at their request to provide some marketing for that effort and to bring a little bit more efficiency for them. You know, they all get busy running their own galleries and doing their own thing that kind of forget about the marketing of Art Around Town. So we've stepped into that role. Art Around Town is the first Friday of every month from 5 to 8 p.m., which is today. So feel free to go out and visit a gallery. There's 12 participating galleries. You can find a new web page for that on goportsmouthnh.com. And over the next couple months, we're going to be bringing some more galleries on board and putting out some new marketing assets for that. So we're really excited to work with that group. As always, that group is made up of chamber members and non-chamber members, and we're happy to support them in whatever capacity we can. So that's my update. I'm not sure if there's any questions, but I have to jump to a robotics competition here in a little bit for my son's robotics team. So we're looking at STEM stuff today. These kids are amazing and cool. So it's kind of aligns with my work anyway. So
It's good to see you keeping busy.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Good luck.
Thank you, Ben.
all right, take care.
All right. We'll jump back to you, Anna.
Sure. So just to remind everybody, our topic areas are business support. We've got two main areas that we're looking at. One is inspection processes and ease of doing business or setting up new business in Portsmouth. Sean has reached out to Shanti Wolf to get some information on the inspections process. I think we still have a to-do as a group to review that and see if there's additional information needed or a meeting set up to get underneath any of the feedback there. Sean, anything else you'd add to that? Okay. And then the second area is around business outreach and CRM support in particular. How can we have extra arms and legs for Sean from a business support perspective? And Sean has set up a demo for later this morning to get to look at what the CRM system is so we can identify specific areas where we can help and support build out of that initiative. Anything else that folks want to add?
Any questions?
I know Anne's a tough act to follow, so we have to bring slides. The pictures are always
You
great.
get the price for conciseness. So let me just add to Sarah's report to just say that because of some changes in Sarah's employment situation, she's got some other demands on her time, so we're not taking her off of this working group, but we're shifting leadership, and Andy has agreed to take over the chair of that working group going forward for the rest of the year.
Great. Mr. Chair, if it's helpful, I could give
You the city council?
well, I could give that update, right?
Please, that would be great.
To give this group a sense of what happened over the last couple of council meetings and what's to come. There is going to be on Monday, April 15th, which is a week from this coming Monday, the second reading and a public hearing for zoning map changes to change many parcels from office research to gateway neighborhood business in an effort to try and find more opportunities for housing. So that will take place on the 15th. It is likely, if it is supported, they could pass it that night. Also to be introduced as first reading will be EV charging ordinance amendments on the 15th, and the second reading public hearing for that would be May 6th, and if there could be a likelihood they could pass it at that night. And what they recently voted on, which will take effect April 15th, is the change of zones A and B in the downtown for parking will become all Zone A. So it will be less confusing. And in so doing, the resident discount increased. So we're charging more for parking all over the map to change it all to Zone A, but the benefit to residents will increase. Lastly, Ben touched upon the Housing Blue Ribbon Committee, and there are several staff members along with me that have been attending. We did not meet last night due to weather, but we will have 2 meetings in April, the 11th and the 18th. They're very well attended. We welcome anyone who can come. You can Zoom if you can't make it in person. But it's going to make some great strides, and there'll be some pretty interesting conversations coming up. So we'll keep you in the loop. Thank you.
Questions of?
Just one quick question in the spirit of the Did You Know
Yes.
series. Are there plans to advertise the residential parking program in parallel with the rate changes?
We can, yes, and we will. And, you may have seen in recent elections that we had parking and DPW staff there at the different polling places to promote the resident parking discount. We will continue to do that, but I think that's a worthy one to keep on the radar.
That's been great for outreach. A lot of voters that come in don't know about it, so.
Yeah. This might be too detailed a question, but it's piggybacking on is there a way for current residents to extend their parking discount with the city in the same way we can with other things like library card extensions and, I don't know, dog licenses and all the other things we can do online? Is that possible to do without physically going to the parking
No, because you
office?
have to provide proof of residency.
Yeah.
So it's a one-time setup, and I think we make people renew that proof every 2 years.
Expires, right?
It does, but it's 2 years. So
Okay.
So it does expire?
Yeah, mine's
you have to
expired.
renew your proof of residency. Right.
You should have
Keep an eye
received
on
a
that.
notice
They
in
send
the
you an
last
email.
Oh, they do?
month and a half.
Far ahead, too.
I do like the app.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's real convenient.
So one question I have is, by going from zones A and B to just A,
Yep.
will that change the 30 different numbers for what street you park on and which end of that street?
No, the zone differentiation numbers.
Yeah, the 1526.
I don't believe that it does. Why, do you have those memorized, the ones you really like?
No, fortunately, the app will retain 4 of them, your four most
smart.
recent ones. But the problem is, at least, if I'm running around and I'm on Lower State Street,
Yep.
I plug in a number, and then if I want to be near the Foundry Garage, I've got to go and start the whole thing over again.
Yep.
But if it was one single number, as long as I'm within the active,
All I know is I don't believe the zone numbers will change. I just
Okay.
know that what we charge will change.
Well, so I guess I'm puzzled by what the significance will be of A and B zones if you're still going to have all the 4-digit zones, which have different rates.
D
Well,
is cheaper.
B
B is cheaper, and we're doing away with.
it's going away, yeah, so it'll be all one price regardless of where
I
you.
believe B is
Saying, why does
150.
each block have a unique number?
Yeah, well, that's what, in other words, if it's all the
I would assume
same
it's to
zone.
track where
Yeah,
people
why
are
can't you
working.
just
Right,
park anywhere you
and you
want.
can park where you are for 3 hours, and you have to move so many feet. So I believe the zone numbers change every 500 feet, would be a guess, but I could be totally wrong.
Yeah, but if you're
Probably a
in
lot
Zone
smaller than
A and you're parked on State Street, why can't you, if you've got an hour left on your app, why can't you just park somewhere else in Zone A?
Maybe you can.
So it's a
My pay
software
grade.
question.
Okay. All right, well, I don't mean to open a can of worms. 'cause
No, but we regularly get Ben Fletcher in here. Maybe that we can add that to the list of questions when
I'm
we
sure
bring
you
Ben
would have
back.
an opinion on it.
You transfer your active session to another zone without penalty, really.
Yeah. And why do you need all the
Can't pay for
zones
new
anyway?
zone because you can't book a new zone when it's still
Yeah, you
ticking in
can.
the old zone. Really? I
Yeah.
haven't been able to. It won't let me.
Charged me. So, yeah.
What are you trying to do?
If I move my car from one side of downtown to the other, and I still have an hour left on it, when I get to the new location,
You've lost it. You've got to start up again.
but my app won't let me, it says
should.
you already have active parking.
Oh.
I haven't figured out how to
that's
cancel
right.
my
All right,
first
that's
one.
good.
Yeah, you don't
feedback.
cancel it, you just add to it.
But that's
Yeah.
not,
No,
it's not an EDC question.
Oh, no.
No, we'll get Ben in here.
That's called really being in the weeds. Okay, I have a very quick report, just a couple changes. As you may be aware, the city is now up and running with its Market Square master planning process. They've got the group established, and the EDC has the benefit of having a representative on that, and Everett has agreed to serve as our representative. Fortunately, Ann is also going to be on that in a different capacity, so I'm hoping we'll have a weighted edge in that working group. And that will start up next week on the 11th, will be the initial meeting. So that could be pretty exciting and certainly impacts our downtown people. I don't know if it's been confirmed, but we're trying to set up the CTE meeting at the high school for December. That seems to be the one meeting date that works with everybody.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear back from the high school, but that should work.
Okay, we'll get you out a message once it's confirmed, but, and then I believe at some point later this year, they'll be setting up the master plan working or citizens committee to deal with the master plan.
Right.
And we'll have an opportunity to have one or more reps on that as well.
Yes.
And so if anybody has any interest in that, would you let me know? And then we'll sort it out and make sure we have adequate representation on that.
Great.
All right. So I don't see anybody here, so we'll end up dispensing with public comment. I assume there's nobody on the Zoom meeting as well. Next meeting is May 3rd, and as the agenda says, our meetings after that will be June 7th, and then we agreed at the last meeting, we're going to have our July meeting on the Wednesday
Good.
before the 4th instead of the 5th afterwards. And I don't know if we have a site for that yet, or?
We do not. I have a question, though.
right.
If I could ask for a poll on if there are members that know they will not be here for that.
Third.
I'm trying to look at for the 3rd, a Wednesday the 3rd, because this room is not available, and I'm looking for an alternative site. I'm just curious if we need to accommodate a dozen people or 6 people or
Okay.
less.
Well, who will be able to attend in person? If you have it in another location, will we be able to have Zoom?
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. So raise your hand if you will be
Same time?
present on the 3rd.
Anna says no.
I don't know.
Traveling.
Jen is on, but don't know.
All right, so 1, 2, 3. So most people will be
Yeah, it
here.
looks like we're
Okay.
almost a full house.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
All right, so we'll get back to you on that as well. So, any new business? No old business? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, I have to take a roll call, so. Sarah,
Agree.
Andy,
Aye.
Bob,
Aye.
Ann,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Everett,
Aye.
aye, and Jen?
Clearance period.
And the chair votes aye. Any opposed? None. Thank you very much. We made it in time.